Hello, greetings, and salutations. Welcome aboard my podcast. My name is Jason with Jay's Paradise Travels. I'd like to thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience seeing the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. I've always found that name kind of funny, the Demon Deacons. Kind of sounds like an oxymoron, not going to lie. But I'm going to be talking about my experience going to go see them. Before I do that, though, a little housekeeping just to go over. If you'd like to go on vacation, specifically a cruise, which is my specialty, or if you'd like to go see a sports game of some kind, perhaps you'd like to go see the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, you can reach out to me in a couple different ways. The first way that you can reach out to me is by email. My email is j.paradise_travels@gmail.com. That's jay.paradise_travels@gmail.com. The second way you could reach out to me is through social media, either Instagram or Facebook. It's the exact same name, Jay's Paradise Travels. That's Jays, no apostrophe in there. Jay's Paradise Travels. On either Instagram or Facebook, you could reach out to me that way as well. All right, we got that out of the way. Let's talk about my experience at Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Wake Forest Demon Deacons are in Winstom-Salem, North Carolina. North Carolina actually has quite a few football teams. And Wake Forest, I believe, was the last one out of all of them that I got to see. Others include North Carolina, Duke, NC State. They got some other smaller ones too, like App State and Eastern Carolina, which I may or may not see those in time. We'll see. As of right now, probably not, but you never know. Anyways, this trip that I went on where I got to see the Wake Forest Demon Deacons was actually part of a three-game trip that I got to go on. My father-in-law moved from California to Virginia during the pandemic, and me and my wife went to go see him. And while out there, he lives in Virginia, but kind of close to the border of North Carolina. While out there, I reached out to a friend of mine, a childhood friend of mine that moved to North Carolina some years ago. He's got his wife and kids out there. Reached out to him to see if he'd be interested in attending some games. He was. And so the night before, I actually had drove down from where we were visiting my in-laws in Virginia, drove down to meet my friend, and went with him and his family and another guy to a Charlotte Hornets game. I'll talk about that one in another podcast. Um, and then actually spent the night at his house. It was going to be a little easier to go to this game from his house than it was driving all the way back late that night, the night before. So I ended up spending the night at his family's house, at that him and his family's house. Got to talk with them, uh, catch up after the game. That was real nice. Got to see him in the morning too. So it was really cool to be able to catch up with him, see a friend, and then be able to head out to this game. From where he lives to where Wake Forest is was not too far. I want to say maybe like an hour drive ish, not too bad. And I went there, found parking. And the parking, I don't recall it being too bad. Sometimes parking can be either really nuts when it comes to being on a campus. Sometimes it could be real expensive. Sometimes it could be both. It could be very chaotic and you spend an arm and a leg. I don't recall it being like that. It was a pretty uh, not a bad uh, experience. Sometimes parking could be a total disaster and so annoying. Found a place to park. Was actually, um, I think I was parked next to some FSU fans. Wake Forest was playing Florida State, and it was a little ways away. I could see the stadium from once I started walking. It was pretty much just a straight shot. Didn't have to turn anywhere or anything like that. It was pretty much just a straight shot, walk right down, right towards the stadium. It was a little ways away, but it was still a straight shot. So I parked, started walking up, was in a bunch of people. There was actually a pretty good crowd, and I'll say that I was a little surprised because Wake Forest hasn't always had the biggest, strongest football team in the world. I think they probably do better on the basketball court than they do on the football field. They've had some good years, um, but they've never been considered like a powerhouse football team. But despite that, it was still a pretty decent crowd. It wasn't like a ghost town going up to the game. There was still a pretty good crowd heading up to there. Um, so I was in amongst everybody as I was walking up there. And I don't think I got off to a late start necessarily, but maybe it was late enough. And by the time there was, some traffic to get to the parking and then having to walk all the way over there. So by the time I got to the game, um, by the time I got to my seat, game had already started. Or so, which I'd like to be there ahead of time if possible, but it was game was already starting, or at least it was already starting. One of the two. Anyways, but here's something that was kind of unique with this place, and I loved it. I don't know if this is for every single game or if it was just for this particular one. If it's for every single game, this was awesome. But as I was coming up, scanned my ticket, went in, got through. I'm all by myself. No one came with me. And my friend, he didn't come to this game. And my wife stayed with her father-in-law to visit with her family. So it was just me. Go up there. As I'm going up there, I look to the right, and there's some tents set up with all this pizza, 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 pizza. And they were trying to give it away. Hey, you want some pizza? Come here, have some pizza. Take as much as you want. I've never had that happen before. And I think the reason behind it was to maybe help if students drink a little too much that day. Maybe that kind of helps have some food in your system. I don't know. I think that's kind of what it was. There could have been some other reason. Maybe there was a sponsorship that I wasn't sure about, or some party or event that I don't know about. Might I could be It could have been one of those things. But whatever it was, I come in, look to the right, and here's free pizza. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I get to have free pizza today, and this is awesome. What a way to start. And I'll admit that I'm not like the most humongous pizza guy. I mean, I think it tastes great, and maybe just because I'm getting older now, I got to watch stuff that I eat. Although listen to some of my podcasts on cruises, oh boy, I eat a lot of stuff. But I do try to be conscious of it, and when I eat pizza, it's like, ugh, eh, you know. Um, but I still eat it. So I can average maybe like once a month. I'm good with that. Some people love it. They could eat it every week. Some people could eat it every day. I'm good with like once a month. Anyway, but here it is, free pizza. And usually, at a ball game, any type of ball game you go to, food is going to be expensive. Um, and to be able to have free pizza as much as I want, because the game was starting and they were trying to get rid of it. They had so much. I can't remember if they had anything to drink too, if I was able to get some water or something like that. I might have been. That I don't remember, but they had a bunch, so I took advantage of that. And if that's something that they do normally on game day, then wow, that's incredible. If it was just a one time thing and I just got fortunate enough to go on that one game day, okay, cool. I was able to be fortunate enough to go on that one game day. Either way, that was unique going to this stadium, being able to get free pizza. I eat that. I don't know, one or two slices, something like that. I don't. They were actually a pretty decent size. They weren't like humongous slices, but they weren't small either. They were like a decent size. So I think I had maybe around two. Ate that. Started heading over there. Ton of FSU fans, as I mentioned, and where I came in, as I looked, and of course I take my outside pictures. I needed to go around to the other side. As I go around, I see a nice little opening. Took a picture there, and there's an opening because there's like one half of the side and there's another half of the side. I want to say on one of the end zones it is connected because I remember looking over in that area and it said "Welcome to Deektown," um, and I believe that was connected to each other. But then on the other end zone, it's not connected, and it's actually uh, there's lawn there and you can sit on the lawn. There's a big scoreboard. I had to go around that to get to my seat on the other side. So I get to the other side and I find my seat. Game's starting, or it already started, whatever the case was. And here I am, not in the shadow. So the way the sun was going, it was going On that side, there was shadow because there was a press box right there. But I'm in the little corner that doesn't have the press box right behind it, and so my little section, no shade, and it's a hot, warm day. That's for sure. So it was me and the sun, and it was it wasn't like a cloudy day. It was a pretty clear day, nice blue skies, which of course I appreciate, especially if I'm leaving Michigan, which can be colder and more gray sometimes. Being able to go into the sun, into the warmth, is nice, definitely for sure. So it was just me and the sun, and I was kind of around a lot of FSU fans, but I was on. I mean, there's a lot of Wake Forest fans too, and I noticed that the side of the stadium that I was on was the Wake Forest side, and the other half of the stadium on the other side was FSU fans. And I think even that's kind of where their bench was, their sideline. The sideline for them was on the other side, so all their FSU fans were over on that side. Wake Forest was on the side I was on, and all their fans were there. So it was almost like the stadium was split in half, and I was on the Wake Forest side, and FSU was on the other side, which is kind of interesting. So normally a college football game, you're going to have a student section for the home team, but they usually have a certain amount allotted to the road team that they can have their fans and students and whoever come, and they're usually kind of grouped together wherever that may be. I know Michigan Stadium, there's a section for that, and depending on how big the school is, you might see a few people there, or you might see a lot of people there. Apparently, with Wake Forest, it was like the half of the stadium. That other sideline was all FSU fans, and probably had some Wake Forest fans sprinkled in there. That's quite a big section to be able to give out to the road team. That, or it's smaller, and then just if the FSU fans travel pretty well. They must travel pretty well. Um, but so I don't know. I don't know if it's that entire thing is normally like that. Half the side is going to always be the road team, or if it just a lot of FSU fans bought tickets on that side, in addition to whatever their allotment was. Could have been either one. Either way, there was a lot of FSU fans. Thought that was kind of interesting. But there was a lot of FSU fans in our area too. And one guy, and one couple I saw. Um, Dude was kind of like a big guy. And when I say big, not like tall and muscular kind of guy. No, he was a bigger fella, stomach wise. And the girl he was with was this really thin, very attractive lady. It kind of reminded me of the show King of Queens a little bit, where when that show first came out, the joke was, how did he get a girl like her? Um, and there's obviously absolutely nothing wrong. Good for him. Good for them. You just don't see it a ton. And I remember a TV show one time saying, usually five stick with five, six and six, tens go with tens, whatever. And that majority is the case. People kind of go with that. However, how do I describe this? However good looking you are is usually how good looking the I could be going way off of this, but anyways, I saw them and it just kind of stuck out because you don't see that too often. Not to say it's not out there. Obviously, it is, and there's absolutely none of it even matters in the long haul. The grand scheme of things, right? It's what's on the inside that counts the most. But you don't see it too often. I saw it there, and they were real vocal. At least he was. FSU fans were in general, and I remember one time going to see. I'll have to do this in another podcast too. Seeing North Carolina, the Tar Heels, a football game, and they also were playing Florida State. So this is my time seeing Florida State on the road and a team in North Carolina, and there was FSU fans there, and they also were pretty loud and uh, I'll just say that. I'll try to be nice. They were pretty loud. They were vocal on what they had to say, and so the fans here were too. Um, I don't know, yeah, and I remember going on a Carnival cruise. I do have a podcast out on that, and there were FSU fans there. This was well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let me talk about the game first. I'll get into that. Anyways, the game itself um, had Florida State in it, um, who was undefeated at the time. Wake Forest had won the week before. They had won. Let me see, who did they play? They had played Pittsburgh. They had beat Pittsburgh. They started out winning 3 games in a row to start the year, then lost 3 straight. Won the week before, so they were sitting at 4-3, just a little over 500. But Florida State came in undefeated, and Florida State was a very good team that year. They so you would think that Wake Forest is going to be the underdog. They're the heavy underdog against Florida State, although they're at home, so being at home sometimes has an advantage. But at the same time, you got half the stadium is Florida State fans, so it's almost like it's neutral site. Regardless, you think, all right, Florida State's got the heavy favorite here. Are they going to? How is it going to play out? Well, first quarter played out how you might think. Florida State had a star quarterback named Jordan Travis that year, and he started out the game by scoring a 13-yard touchdown run on his own for a 7-0 lead. They added a field goal also in the first quarter, so it was 10-0 at the end of the first quarter. 10-0, depending on how teams are and how good they are. 10-0 can be a very deceptive lead. You score one touchdown and make it 10-7. It looks good. A 10-point lead looks good, but you score one touchdown, you cut that lead to 3, you got momentum on your side. A 10-0 lead can be a very deceptive lead. That's my almost like a 2-0 lead in hockey. It looks good, but once that other team scores and gets on the board and gets some momentum, some confidence, they're only down by 1, they got some momentum on their side. Next thing you know, the game's tied and they're taking the lead. Similar with the 10-0 lead. Second quarter comes around, it's 10-0, and Wake Forest actually does score a touchdown to make it 10-7. And this is where I'm thinking, okay, we might have a game here. Again, a 10-0 lead can be very deceptive. And now Wake Forest has scored. They got a little bit of momentum on their side. Maybe they can make this a game. If they'll win, who knows? They could pull up an upset, but let's see if they can make it a game. No, no, didn't happen. Florida State proceeded to roll off not 1, not 2, but 3 straight touchdowns. One of them was an 80-yard touchdown pass. It was just a screen pass to one of their backs, but he took it for 80 yards, broke a couple tackles in the process, and sauntered in 80 yards away. That was the second of the touchdown. Then the third one, the quarterback just drops back. Jordan Davis, let me just throw this little lob up into the end zone. And Keon Coleman, who was a transfer from Michigan State, gave Michigan some issues, I remember. He just goes up. He had one guy on him, goes up, makes a one-handed grab. I think he's in the NFL now. Anyways, they just ran away with it in the second quarter and added a field goal near the end of it. So it was 34-7 at halftime. I'm like, all right, well, so much for this being a game, but that's okay. I mean, I'm a Wake Forest fan for a day, but in all honesty, I don't have a dog in the fight. Um, uh, Third quarter though, Wake Forest did start coming back a little bit. I think by that time, Florida State may have called off the dogs a little bit. But Florida State, or excuse me, Wake Forest did respond with a couple of touchdowns of their own to cut the lead to 34-16. They did try a 2-point conversion at one point, failed that, so that's why it was 34-16 instead of 34-17. But in the fourth quarter, Florida State was able to add on another touchdown. I think that was the second touchdown by their running back, Trey Benson. So Keon Coleman, their star wide receiver who transferred from Michigan State, who's in the NFL now, he had 2 receiving touchdowns. Trey Benson, their back, he had a couple touchdowns. He had one in the fourth as well. And then Jordan Travis had combined 3 touchdowns. He had 2 of them were passing to Keon Coleman, 1 rushing himself. So 5 touchdowns. And they had another field goal. So altogether, they had 41. The final score ended up being 41-16. Florida State just overpowered them. They were overmatched. And that was what I figured. That's what I expected. You hope for a good game, you hope for something kind of tight, but didn't happen. Was able to still see it, and happy that I did. The stadium is called. I think this is what it's called, Allegacy. I think that's how you pronounce the word, Allegacy Federal Credit Union Stadium. That is a mouthful to have to say. That is a mouthful. I feel sorry for anyone who's got to continually either announce it or say it because that's so much words. But it is what it is. Their capacity is a little over 31,000, about 31,500, and apparently the attendance was 31,288, making it almost full. I don't know if that many was there because I feel like I did see quite a few empty seats on the floor, that the other half of the stadium where Florida State was. I don't feel like it was completely full. I could be wrong on that. And then in our area, well, I don't know. I guess the Wake Forest side had a decent amount of people, but I still feel like I saw empty seats. So I don't know if it was completely full. Maybe that was how many tickets they sold for the game. I don't know. Yeah, so that was the stadium. Like I mentioned, there is a hill that people can sit on um, with the scoreboard. I didn't see a ton of people there. I had been to a Missouri game once. That's the only other. How many teams do that? There's Wake Forest, there's Missouri. I'm trying to think if there's any others. And I've been to Missouri too. Uh, theirs was packed. I'll talk about that in another podcast. But I don't recall seeing a ton of people. There was some. There was a decent amount, but I don't recall seeing it like completely packed on that hill. But they do have that. Um, yeah. So the stadium, medium-sized stadium, I guess. Nothing humongous. 31,000. It's a little above small. uh, and they have a mascot that this dude. Okay. So I didn't get there ahead of time. I didn't get there to start. I was still coming in, had the pizza, so I didn't get to see this. But the mascot like rides in on a motorcycle to start it. This Demon Deacon guy. I'm sure he has a name. I don't know the name of it. Um, and the only other mascot that I know rides in a motorcycle besides them is Oregon that I can think of. And I've done a podcast on Oregon. I mentioned that. Feel free to go back and listen to that. But their mascot rides in a motorcycle to start the game. Wake Forest did too. I'm sure that's pretty cool to see. So that's part of their pregame. Kind of somewhat unique with that. Again, I missed it though. Um, and then after the game, walked back. It was busy, very busy, heading back to that car with all the crowd and the traffic. And where my GPS took me, it didn't take me back to where I came. It took me another way, and there was a decent amount of traffic heading back. And even though I was meeting up with my friends again the next day, where I was going to see the Carolina Panthers, I didn't go back to their house. I ended up going back to my in-laws' house so I could see my family a little bit. In retrospect, maybe maybe just to save some miles on the car and some gas, I probably could have gone back to my friend's house and stayed another day if they were cool with it, which they're pretty cool. I'm sure they would have been, and it would have been a little closer that way. Oh well. Anyway, I went back. I went back to my family's house and spent the evening with them. So I want to talk a little bit about Florida State here, from before. Florida State, their fans, uh, they can be a little vocal. They can be a little chipper. I'm noticing. When I've seen them now on the road, I haven't been to a Florida State game at home. I'm sure it's a good atmosphere. And one day, I think if I think about other, because I just saw the Miami Heat and did a podcast on them. Out of the teams that I'm going to go see in Florida, I think the Florida State Seminoles are the last team I have. I think after that, I'm done with the state of Florida. I think I've seen everyone else. Some I've done a podcast on, some I've still got to do a podcast on. But anyway, the two times I've seen the Florida State Seminoles, both of them were on the road. One of them was in North Carolina, and the other was in Wake Forest. Both are in the state of North Carolina, and we they're very vocal. I noticed, but when anyways, I went on this cruise. So that year, this was 2023, by the way. That year they had went undefeated. Michigan went undefeated too, um, and ended up eventually winning the national championship. But Florida State went undefeated, and that star quarterback that I had mentioned, Jordan Travis, who lit it up in this game, got injured near the end of the season, and because of it, because of that one guy's injury, even though they were undefeated and even won their conference, the ACC, the playoffs, the committee did not select them to go into the playoffs, but instead selected Alabama, causing a controversy. Alabama did have a loss under the belt to one of the teams that was going in the playoffs, but they felt that Alabama was playing better at the time, and their reasoning was, who would you rather play at the moment? Would you rather play Alabama, who's playing hot, or would you rather play Florida State, who has an injured quarterback? Oh, you'd rather play Florida State because they have an injured quarterback? Okay, that means Alabama's the better team. We're putting them in. And that was their reasoning on it. We're on this cruise when that happens. Michigan had just won the Big Ten championship. They were going on to the playoffs. Florida State had just won the ACC championship with a backup quarterback. Didn't blow the team away, but they still won the game. And all that transpires. Michigan gets put in. Florida State does not. Florida State fans were on the cruise. They see me and my friend wearing our Michigan stuff, and they start booing us. Complete total strangers booing us because we had Michigan gear on. Like we had anything to do with Florida State not getting in. Like we had anything to do with the playoff committee putting Alabama above Florida State. They're booing Michigan fans. Michigan kind of got this annoying little bad rap because of one of their guys and the sign stealing thing. By that time, he had already been fired. Program had moved on. Any little thing of sign stealing was out the window by that point. They had already moved on from it. But people who don't like Michigan are going to have it in their head. Oh, okay, they're cheaters now for all of the rest of eternity. And so, anyways, so they're giving us a hard, they're booing us, having a hard time, and calling Michigan cheaters. All upset because Florida State didn't get in. Again, Michigan had nothing to do with that. They weren't a part of that committee. Me and my friend had no part of that. And this is where it gets interesting when it comes to sports and with fans. And I love being able, I enjoy watching games. I really do. And there's competitiveness with it. That's cool. But sometimes it just goes a little too far. I would say sometimes, a lot of times it gets too far. And this rival, these hatreds and all this that people just take it way too far gets a little nuts. And it kind of irritates me a little bit too. You boo a complete stranger. You don't know them. You know nothing about them. You don't know what they're capable of. And it's like that's not a good idea. Now I know myself. I'm a peaceful person, and I'm not going to take these rivalries too far, or any of the sports too far. If my team wins, cool. If they don't, bummer. Whatever. Life moves on. There's more important things in life than games. As much as I enjoy it, there are more important things in life. And in the moment when your team loses, yeah, it can be upsetting. But eventually you got to go back. Even when your team wins and they could win the championship, you still got bills to pay. You could have a death in the family. Life happens. Sports is not the end all be all in life. So to be able to take that, have the mentality in your mind that I'm going to go to a complete stranger who I have no idea what's going on in their life and start booing them, jeering them, cheering them. And that happens all the time in games and it just, it's so annoying. So the two times that I've seen Florida State um, on the road, I saw their fans join. Now that's at a game, kind of understandable. It's at a game, whatever. But it just, I saw like what the fan base is kind of like. They're a little jawing, and I'm not saying Michigan fans are pristine either. All fan bases can be like this. But then to be on that cruise and then have those guys start booing us, someone they don't know at all. We don't even say anything to them. They start booing us, just kind of even more so put it in my mind like this fan base really does like to chirp at other people. And then as we leave that cruise, we're putting our stuff away. Florida State fans go by. Now we didn't have any Michigan gear on at this time, and we just say, "Hey, sorry about what happened. That's a bummer." And then they throw a yeah, but they let Michigan the cheaters in. And it's like, okay, again, we didn't have our Michigan stuff. They're upset or whatever. Don't be getting upset at Michigan because they did get in. Be upset with either Alabama who jumped you, or you're not even them, or the playoff committee. It's not that. So Florida State fans do like to get a little chipper. That's what I've noticed. Um, as I said, though, a lot of fan bases. Every fan base is going to have their people that are going to embarrass their school by their actions. We'll just call a spade a spade. You boo a stranger, you've now embarrassed that university you've represented that you like. Don't act like that. Do not act like that. Be civil. Enjoy the sport. Enjoy even competition, but just leave it at that. There are more important things in life than sports. And that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way when it came to Florida State fans. Now, one day I will go see Florida State, and I will be a Florida State fan for uh, um, a day because that's just what I do with my hobby. But that fan base and uh, that university kind of rubbed me the wrong way with that. I won't lie. And as it was, I remember Florida State years ago and under Bobby Bowder, they had a dominant team, and it was uh, it was something to watch them to be able to be as good as they were, and kind of annoyed me as a fan, thinking like I wanted to be, I wanted Michigan to be that dominant and be rolling over people and winning national championships. When was that? 90s, late 90s, something like that. Florida State under Bobby Bowden. Anyways, I'm going off a little tangent about that. That doesn't happen too often, but this is part of that experience that I'm talking about. And this is a podcast about Wake Forest, not necessarily um, Florida State, but I'm just discussing that's what happened, uh, and it just all kind of ties in together. That's why I'm bringing it up. Anyways, as regards Florida State, or excuse me, Wake Forest. Like I said, they were 4-3 coming into that game. Lost that game. The week before they beat Pittsburgh. That ended up being their last victory of the season. Florida State started loss after loss after loss. They lost five in a row. They ended up going 4-8 on the season. Didn't make a bowl game. Florida State ended up, like I said, going undefeated, missing the playoffs, but then got absolutely annihilated by Georgia. And then the following year, in 2024, started off with a loss. I think it was against Boston College, and just had just a horrible year. And there could be a smarmy part of me inside that could be happy about that and gleeful based on those Florida State fans. Like, I could be rejoicing about that. I'm not. I'm not that guy. I'm not that type of person. But it could be there if wanted to be. Um, anyways, yeah, Wake Forest ended up going 4-8, not making a bowl game. Um, how they did back in 2024, I'm not entirely sure. Then I don't follow Wake Forest a ton. I'll just see kind of here and there, maybe something on them. But it was something to go see. They're in the ACC, so that's one of the Power Four conferences, and that's what I do now. Is I just stick with the Power Four. That's why I mentioned like East Carolina or App State. They're not in a Power Four conference at the moment, so I don't think I'll go. If they ever do get somehow into a Power Four conference, because all these conferences add teams and things are shifting out, maybe I'll go to see them. But if not, then I probably won't. Um, yeah, but that was my experience with Wake Forest. And like I said, one of the highlights was being able to go there and get that free pizza at the very beginning. I don't know if that's every game. If you are from Wake Forest in that area, or you've gone to a game, um, and you can let me know if that is a regular thing, if that is something they do all the time. If so, that is awesome. Let me know if you have your own experience with Wake Forest or anything. Feel free to leave it in a comment. I'd love to read it if you have a good experience, or it could be a bad one too. I don't know. Maybe there was a game that was heartbreaking for you that you remember you were at, or your team was a part of. Feel free to leave it. But again, keep it clean. That whole sports rivalry thing, I do not want in my comments. That's not what this is about. This is a travel podcast, not a sports one. Um, leave that out. If there's any hatred towards a team, I don't want that in the podcast comments. Keep it clean. But feel free to leave an experience. I love to read it and try to answer it to you. If it's something you want to go see, maybe yourself next season, or some other time, or perhaps you want to go to Wake Forest, you're a student or recruit, you want to go there, see what it's like. Uh, or do you want to go on vacation? Like I said, my specialty is cruises, and you want to go on vacation. You want to do any of those things, let me know. Be happy to help you out. Again, you can reach out to me through my email address at j.paradise_travels@gmail.com. That's jay.paradise_travels@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to me on social media, Jay's Paradise Travels, Jays, Jay's Paradise Travels, on either Instagram or Facebook. I got some pictures up there of places that I've gone and my travel experiences as well. So feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to look at that, look at those pictures, and interact with me in those ways. If you did enjoy this podcast, I hope you liked it. Hopefully, you learned something from it, took something away from it. Feel free to like it, the video itself. Please subscribe to the channel. Definitely looking to boost up the numbers, get my name out there, and feel free to share it with as many people as you possibly can. All those things help podcasters keep their podcast going, and helps me with my business, trying to get my name out there, and being able to help the world through one vacation at a time. Anyways, thank you again for listening to this week's episode, and I'll talk to everyone later. Take care. Bye bye.